Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this explosive deep dive into one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history, where tensions boiled over on the set of ITV's beloved Loose Women, and what started as a casual celebrity interview spiraled into a full-blown confrontation that left audiences gasping and headlines screaming. Picture this, it's a typical Tuesday afternoon in the bustling studios of London. The year is 2010, and the Loose Women panel is buzzing with their signature mix of wit, candor, and unfiltered opinions. Denise Welch, the fiery Geordie powerhouse known for her no-holds-barred takes on everything from politics to personal heartaches, is holding court alongside her co-panelists, the air thick with laughter and the faint scent of fresh coffee from the green room. Enter Sean Bean, the rugged Yorkshire icon whose gravelly voice and brooding intensity have made him a staple in Hollywood blockbusters like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, a man whose characters often meet untimely ends but whose real-life charm has won over fans worldwide. Sean, fresh off promoting his latest gritty drama, strides onto the set with that trademark smirk, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder, ready for what he assumes will be a light-hearted chinwag about his career highs and lows. But oh, how quickly the tide turns in the unpredictable waters of live TV. As the cameras roll and the theme music fades, the conversation kicks off innocently and Denise leans in with her trademark warmth, asking Sean about his latest role, a brooding anti-hero grappling with redemption in a tale of urban decay and moral ambiguity. Sean, ever the storyteller, dives in with anecdotes from the set, regaling the panel with tales of late-night shoots in rain-soaked Manchester alleys, the camaraderie with co-stars who became lifelong mates, and the peculiar superstitions that actors cling to for luck, like his own ritual of whispering a quiet prayer before every death scene, a nod to his storied on-screen demises. The audience chuckles, the panel nods appreciatively, and for a fleeting moment, it feels like the perfect synergy of British telemagic, a beloved actor sharing glimpses behind the curtain, and a panel of women who embody the unvarnished truth of everyday life. But beneath the surface, there's a subtle undercurrent, a spark waiting to ignite, because Denise Welch doesn't do small talk for long. She's a woman who's stared down addiction, navigated the choppy seas of fame, and emerged with a voice that's as sharp as a stiletto heel. As Sean waxes poetic about the authenticity of his character's struggles, Denise's eyes narrow ever so slightly, her journalist's instinct kicking in, sensing an opportunity to peel back the layers and get to the raw, beating heart of the matter. And that's when it happens, the pivot from polite inquiry to probing interrogation, as Denise steers the chat toward the elephant in the room, the portrayal of women in Sean's films, those damsels in distress or fierce warriors who too often serve as plot devices rather than fully fleshed-out souls. Sean, caught off guard but gracious, responds with a thoughtful defense, arguing that his roles demand complexity in a male-dominated genre, that the scripts he chooses reflect the world's imperfections, not endorse them. The panel murmurs in agreement at first, but Denise, ever the feminist firebrand, isn't buying it wholesale. She counters with a passionate soliloquy on the need for better representation, drawing from her own battles in an industry that once typecast her as the sassy sidekick rather than the leading lady. The studio lights seem to dim under the weight of the exchange, the audience leaning forward in their seats, sensing the shift from banter to battle. Sean's brow furrows, his easygoing demeanor cracking just a fraction as he pushes back, insisting that change comes from within the creative process, not finger-pointing from the sidelines. And there it is, the first crack in the facade, a verbal volley that echoes through the microphones, amplified for millions watching at home over their afternoon tea. What follows is a masterclass in escalating tension, where words fly like sparks from a flint, each retort sharper than the last. Denise's Geordie lilt rising in pitch, Sean's Yorkshire grit grounding his rebuttals with unyielding resolve. The co-panelists attempt to mediate, tossing in quips to lighten the mood, but it's too late. The clash has taken on a life of its own, a collision of two titans whose passions run as deep as their accents are thick. As the argument intensifies, Denise's face flushes with the heat of conviction, her hands gesturing wildly, punctuating points about equity and empowerment that have simmered in her for decades. Sean, no stranger to on-screen fury, matches her energy, his voice booming with the authority of a man who's voiced dragons and dual dorks. Yet here, in this brightly lit studio, he's just a guest defending his craft against a force of nature. The audience erupts in a mix of applause and uneasy laughter, unsure whether to cheer the drama or root for reconciliation, while behind the glass, producers scramble, fingers hovering over the commercial break button, hearts pounding in rhythm with the escalating decibels. This isn't just a spat, it's a microcosm of the broader cultural conversations raging across Britain and beyond about gender dynamics in media, the responsibilities of storytellers, and the fine line between critique and confrontation. Denise, drawing from her tenure on shows like Coronation Street where she portrayed women with spines of steel, refuses to back down, her words a torrent of lived experience, the auditions lost to prettier faces, the scripts that reduced her to eye candy, the quiet revolution she's fought in writers' rooms and green rooms alike. Sean, countering with stories from his own trench, acid the directors who dismissed his input, the producers who prioritized spectacle over substance. He finds himself on the defensive, his usual charisma tempered by frustration. The panel's attempts at levity fall flat. One co-host jokes about Sean's habit of dying on screen, suggesting he might need a resurrection spell for this debate, but it only fans the flames, eliciting a sharp retort from Denise about not trivializing serious discourse. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours, the clock ticking mercilessly toward the segment's end, yet neither combatant yields ground, their ideologies clashing like tectonic plates. Viewers at home, glued to their screens, flood social media with reactions to hashtags trending, opinions polarizing, some hailing Denise as a heroine for calling out the patriarchy, others defending Sean as a victim of ambush journalism disguised as chat. Back in the studio, the air grows thick with unspoken stakes. For Denise, this is personal, a chance to amplify voices long silenced. For Sean, it's professional pride on the line, a guest spot turned gauntlet. As the argument reaches fever pitch, with Denise accusing the industry of perpetuating outdated tropes and Sean retorting that art mirrors life, not dictates it, the breaking point looms. The co-panelists exchange wide-eyed glances, the floor manager signals frantically, and in a move that will etch this moment into TV lore, Denise Welch rises from her seat, her chair scraping against the floor like a declaration of war. If you can't see the bigger picture here, Sean, perhaps it's time you stepped off this panel, she declares, her voice steady but laced with steel, the words hanging in the ether like a guillotine's blade. Gasps ripple through the audience, the panel falls silent, and Sean's expression shifts from defiance to disbelief, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender or supplication. It's hard to tell in the chaos. With a nod from the director, security subtly positions themselves at the edges of the set, not for force but for formality, as the commercial break mercifully intervenes, lights dimming on a scene straight out of a soap opera twist. But this is no script, this is Loose Women at its most unscripted, raw, and riveting, a testament to the power of live television to unearth truths buried under layers of polish and pretense. As the feeds cut to ads for tea bags and cleaning products, the internet ignites, forums buzzing with speculation. Was this staged for ratings, a genuine rift, or the inevitable explosion of two strong-willed souls in a pressure cooker? Denise retreats to the green room, her adrenaline surging, while Sean, ever the professional, shakes hands with the crew, his exit as dignified as the circumstances allow. Yet, the echo of her words a step off this panel resonates, a mic-drop moment that redefines guest etiquette and panel dynamics forever. In the annals of British daytime TV, few incidents capture the zeitgeist quite like this, a clash not just of celebrities, but of eras, genders, and worldviews, reminding us that behind every smile on screen lies a story untold, a passion unquenched, and a willingness to fight for what matters. And as we peel back the layers of this fateful encounter, we'll uncover not just the what, but the why, the personal histories that fueled the fire, the cultural currents that carried it, and the aftermath that rippled through careers and conversations alike. Stay tuned, because this is only the beginning of our journey into the heart of the storm. Now that the dust has settled on that electrifying on-air showdown, let's rewind the tape and explore the architects of this tempest, Denise Welch and Sean Bin. two luminaries whose paths converged in a blaze of controversy, but whose journeys to that studio chair were paved with triumphs, trials, and the kind of resilience that turned scars into stories. Denise Welch, born Jacqueline Denise Welch on May 22, 1958, in Tynemouth, Northumberland, emerged from the salt-kissed shores of the Northeast like a force of nature, her Geordie roots infusing every syllable with authenticity and grit. From a young age, she was drawn to the stage, her childhood performances and school plays hinting at the dramatic destiny awaiting her, a destiny that would see her conquer soap operas, stand-up comedy, and candid confessional TV with equal ferocity. Her breakout came in the late 1980s with roles in gritty dramas like Spender and The Growing Pains of Adrian Mole, but it was her tenure as Natalie Horrocks in Coronation Street from 1997 to 2000 that catapulted her into the national consciousness. As the troubled barmaid entangled in love triangles and personal demons, Denise brought her raw vulnerability to the screen, mirroring her own battles with depression and addiction that would later become fodder for her memoir, The Unwelcome Visitor, a brutally honest account of mental health struggles that resonated with millions. Off-screen, life imitated art in ways both heartbreaking and heroic, marriages that crumbled under the spotlight's glare, motherhood to sons Maddie and Louis that grounded her amid the chaos, and a triumphant second act on Loose Women starting in 2005, where she traded scripted lines for spontaneous rants on everything from Brexit to body positivity. By 2010, Denise was the show's unofficial queen bee, her 17 years on the cobbles giving way to a panel seat where she wielded her wit like a broadsword, championing women's rights with the fervor of someone who's lived the fight from advocating for better maternal mental health support to calling out ageism in Hollywood, her voice a clarion call for the overlooked and underestimated. It was this unapologetic advocacy that set the stage for The Clash, her feminist lens honed by decades of navigating a male-skewed industry that often valued her looks over her talent, reducing her to the hot one in ensemble casts while sidelining her depth. Enter Sean Bean, born Sean Mark Bean on April 17, 1959, in Handsworth, Sheffield, a stone's throw from Denise's stomping grounds yet worlds apart in the trajectories they carved through fame's labyrinth. Sean's ascent was meteoric yet methodical, his steel mill youth forging a work ethic as unyielding as the Yorkshire Moors. Apprenticed as a welder before drama school at RADA, he traded sparks from metal for those of the spotlight, his baritone timbre and piercing gaze making him the go-to for brooding everyman in epics like Sharpe and Troy. By the 2000s, he was inescapably Boromir's tragic nobility in The Lord of the Rings, Ned Stark's honorable fall in Game of Thrones as a roles that cemented his status as cinema's most memorably mortal hero, his death scene spawning memes and superstitions alike. Yet beneath the chainmail and accents lay a man of quiet complexities, a thrice-married father navigating tabloid scrutiny, a patron of Sheffield's cultural scene who poured earnings into local theaters, and an actor who chose projects not for paychecks but for passion. From art house indies to blockbuster franchises, Sean's worldview, shaped by blue-collar roots and a Catholic upbringing, emphasized storytelling as a mirror to humanity's flaws, the flaws he defended fiercely, believing that sanitizing narratives dishonor the very people they sought to portray. This philosophical bent, combined with his affable off-screen persona, think pub pints with fans and impromptu poetry recitals, made him a Loose Women dream guest. Or so the producers thought. Little did they know that Sean's commitment to authentic portrayals often blurred into tolerance for tropes that grated against Denise's progressive sensibilities, setting up an ideological powder keg primed for ignition. Their shared northern heritage should have been a bridge, both products of industrial heartlands where community trumped celebrity, accents thick with pride, yet it amplified their differences, turning regional banter into a battleground for broader debates. Denise, the outspoken matriarch who'd stared down her demons in rehab and on stage, viewed media through the prism of lived inequality. Sean, the stoic survivor who'd headbutted critics and outlasted on-screen fates, saw it as craft unencumbered by agenda. As they settled into their seats that fateful day, the chemistry crackled, a mutual respect laced with curiosity, two pros sizing each other up over small talk about mutual acquaintances in Manchester's theatre circuit. But as the interview deepened, personal histories bubbled to the surface. Denise referencing a role she lost to a blonde bombshell type, Sean nodding sympathetically while recounting his own brushes with typecasting as the gruff northerner. The rapport was building, a fleeting alliance of underdogs who'd clawed their way up, until Denise posed the question that shattered the illusion. "Sean, love, your films are brilliant, but don't you think the women in them are a bit expendable, like props for the hero's journey?" It was classic Denise, blunt, affectionate, incisive, and Sean's response, a measured art's messy. Denise: "It reflects life's inequalities, doesn't fix them overnight," polite but pointed, lit the fuse. From there, the exchange accelerated, Denise drawing on her Coronation Street days where she'd advocated for stronger female arcs, Sean countering with tales from the Lord of the Rings set where Tilda Owen's arc proved the tide turning. The panel interjected sporadically, one panelist sharing a story of her own overlooked audition, another praising Sean's chivalrous off-screen reputation, but the duo dominated, their voices overlapping in a symphony of sincerity and stubbornness. Viewers sensed the authenticity. This wasn't pantomime drama but a genuine grappling with power structures. Denise's passion fueled by her advocacy work with charities like Mind, Sean's by his belief in narrative evolution through iteration, not accusation. As tempers frayed, Denise's chair-bound energy translated into animated leans forward, her bangles jangling like warning bells, while Sean gripped the armrest, his knuckles widening, evoking the tension of his battlefield scenes. The co-hosts, sensing the swell, tried redirection as Sean, "Tell us about that infamous death count." But it only underscored the divide, Denise quipping, "Aye, and how many of those end with a woman weeping over your corpse?" Laughter erupted, but it was nervous, the line between jest and jab blurring. Behind the scenes, Denise's preparation had been meticulous. She'd reviewed Sean's filmography, jotting notes on gender imbalances, her loose women tenure teaching her that bold questions yield bold TV. Sean, arriving with a rider of Yorkshire tea and no preconceptions, found himself improvising defenses for an industry he loved but rarely critiqued publicly. Their clash, then, was inevitably a confluence of timing, temperament, and topic. Two northern stars whose stars aligned for collision. In the green room beforehand, light chit-chat about family grounded them, Denise gushing over her son's artistic pursuits, Sean sharing tales of his daughter's school plays. But on air, vulnerability turned to valor, personal anecdotes weaponized in service of larger truths. The argument's crescendo saw Denise invoke her own expendable moments, a postpartum depression sideline for sexy roles, as Sean empathizing yet insisting, "We're all fighting the same beast, Denise, let's not turn on each other." It was a plea for unity that almost diffused the bomb, but Denise, eyes blazing, pressed on. "Unity starts with accountability, Sean." The studio held its breath, the weight of unspoken industry woes hanging heavy. When she uttered those fateful words, "A time to step off," it wasn't malice but a boundary, a panelist's prerogative in the anarchic democracy of loose women. Sean's exit was graceful, a handshake and a wry fair play, lass, but the ripple effects were seismic, sparking editorials on celebrity accountability and panel power dynamics. This paragraph peels back their biographies not as backstory but as bedrock, revealing how Denise's survivor spirit and Sean's artisan ethos made their confrontation not random but resonant, a clash that humanized them both amid the headlines. As we move forward, we'll dissect the blow by blow, uncovering nuances lost in sound bites, and why this moment endures as a touchstone for unfiltered discourse. With the principles painted in vivid strokes, let's zoom in on the eye of the hurricane, the verbatim volleys and visceral undercurrents of that now infamous segment, where every pause crackled with import and every inflection carried a freight of unspoken histories, transforming a routine interview into a riveting referendum on representation in the realm of real and real. The segment opens with the familiar flourish, host Kay Adams introducing Sean with effusive praise. "He's died more times than Dracula's had hot dinners, but he's still our favorite Yorkshire rose." Drawing chuckles as Sean ambles on, exchanging air kisses with the panel, his presence filling the studio like a draught from the moors. Denise, seated center stage in a bold red blouse that mirrors her temperament, kicks off with warmth, "Sean, pet, welcome. Now, this new film of yours, it's got grit, guts, and a leading lady who's finally more than a love interest.